This year we're celebrating 50 years of library service within Moonee Valley. And whilst we have 5 wonderful public libraries, we are always looking to make books more accessible to the community. We're building little libraries across the city, sponsored by Moonee Valley Libraries, which provide easy access to books for readers of all ages and backgrounds. We want to encourage a love of reading and lifelong learning within our community.
Not only do these little libraries support literacy for people of all ages, but they also foster a sense of community and they encourage an idea about recycling. The Aberfeldy Men's Shed have taken on this project of building these wonderful little book houses, and they've done an amazing job utilising recycled materials wherever they can. The Moonee Valley Libraries are really happy to support a project like this, which has community, sustainability and literacy at its heart.
Acorn is a great opportunity to meet with other people. It's a networking without the awkwardness. Everybody gets to share their experiences, brainstorm. It's almost like another brains trust.
I've been coming to Acorn now for the last month actually, every Thursday, and it's been great. I've been meeting new faces, new people, and they've been great and giving me some good ideas.
Technology is changing how, when and where we work. Council has started Acorn, a co-working space for entrepreneurs and business people to meet, share and collaborate. Acorn is currently a trial at Sam Merrifield Library with space for 15 businesses in 3 sessions each Thursday, and includes a program of business speakers to share their experiences. If you're interested, visit our website to reserve your place.
It's Laura and I care for my 14-year-old son Christian. Christian's been diagnosed with autism. We found with Christian that he wasn't speaking at the age of 2 and we were very concerned. He doesn't speak much now at all. My average day as a carer is just go from the morning. When Christian gets up at 5 a.m, I'm up with him just to supervise and make sure everything's okay and that he's safe. There's no 2 days for me that are the same. There's no minute that it's the same. It could change from being happy to an absolute volcano eruption. But we try to keep him as happy and content as he can be and explain to him how his day will look. With Christian, he will communicate to us through either putting on some music and making us interact with him, or playing the piano and asking us to sing with him by making us stand next to him, and we just all come together as a family.
My name is Isaiah and I care for my brother Christian. Having a connection with my brother is very special. With music, I play the piano and he sings.
In the early days when people would stare at me, for instance in the supermarket when Christian was having a little tantrum or whatever he was having, I found it really upsetting and it really made me feel uncomfortable. So just offering your help or saying, is everything okay, has such an impact on one's life when they're having that moment with their child.
I wrote a song called My Brother that was for Christian, and I wrote it because I wanted to express out all my feelings and show everyone that how I feel about having a brother with autism. You're so affectionate and no one can change that. You are loving and kind to everyone around you. When you smile, it makes me so happy. When I get angry, remember I will always love you. I
This is how we get social.
I think it's better to walk to school because we can get out, do some physical activity, look at the environment.
So what I like about walking to school is that you get energised and you can talk to all your friends.
I feel awake from the fresh air and I'm not as tired and I'm ready to go to school.
What makes walking to school really fun is that you can do it with mates and interact with other people, and you can find out things about other people that you don't know already.
After walking, I feel healthy and fresh and ready for the day.
I think that walking to school is fun because, especially now with all the active paths, I think that because the whole school's involved, you can walk with your friends and teachers sometimes.
Moonee Valley City Council engaged Kids Own Publishing to make this book with the children of the Avondale Heights Preschool. They have been walking, talking, looking, listening, and we've been making art with Verity, our artist. All of that content is gathered then and put into a book.
The reactions from the children for this project have been really warm and responsive. They have been so excited about being involved in the project.
And the most exciting thing about the book that is made by the children for the children of Moonee Valley is that we are going to be able to deliver this book to each one of our education and care services in Moonee Valley.
Good evening everyone and welcome to the ordinary meeting of Council on the 23rd of October 2018, which is now opened. I'd like to advise members of the public gallery that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. The recording will also be available on Council's website. Gallery attendees are also advised that their presence may be recorded. I'd also like to request that members of the gallery could please switch their mobile phones to silent mode during this meeting tonight. On behalf of the City of Moonee Valley, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and to their elders and their community members. We also extend our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people here today with us as well. Councillors, before I get to the council meeting, as this will be my last meeting as the Mayor of the City for 2018, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank my Deputy Mayor, who's been a great Deputy Mayor for me. I'd like to acknowledge all my fellow colleague councillors who have made my job as Mayor so very, very easy and very, very fulfilling this year. I'd also like to thank Brian Lancaster, our CEO, and all the staff that have helped me absolutely impeccably to have such a great fulfilment this year. So thank you to everyone, to the staff, to my colleagues, to my Deputy Mayor, and to my wife and my family as well for allowing me to do this job as well too. So it was just a timely reminder for everyone. Thank you very much. I'm moving to apologies and leave of absences. Councillors, I haven't received any apologies for tonight's meeting, but Councillor Thrace is on absence of leave for this meeting, and Councillor Lawrence has sought leave of absence. So, Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that Councillor Lawrence be granted leave of absence from the 31st of October to the 26th of November? Councillor Nation and Councillor Sharp to second it. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the ordinary meeting of Council held on Tuesday the 9th of October 2018 be confirmed? Councillor Nation, Councillor Lawrence. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor have any conflict of interest in any of the items on tonight's agenda? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an indirect conflict of interest in item 10.2 for conflicting duty for reasons disclosed to the CEO prior to the commencement of the meeting. I also have an indirect conflict of interest in item 10.8 due to conflicting duty, again for reasons disclosed to the CEO prior to the commencement of the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Does any other councillor have any conflict of interest? Okay, I'll move on to presentations. Councillors, before we go to presentations, can I have someone move and second suspension of standing order? Councillor Gauci-Marucci, Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And we'll just go to suspending orders right now, and I'll just move around to the front here with the young kindergarten children for kindergarten week.
We acknowledge that we are on traditional lands of the Kulin Nation. We offer our respects to all Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders peoples both past and present.
We would like to read our story, We Walk Together. Children walked to the river from kinder. We walked a long way, following the path and friends and parents. We met Uncle Dave, a Wurundjeri man at the river. He said, Wuminjika, which means welcome. We sat in a circle on the grass and watched the river. Uncle Dave told us the river was salt water and fresh water. The Wurundjeri ate fish and crabs and eels. Uncle Dave made a fire to welcome us to Wurundjeri country. He made an orangey red fire with white smoke so we could walk through the smoke. We took a leaf from a gum branch. We walked through the smoke, put our leaf on the fire. The smoke is healing, and we smiled. Uncle Dave said, healing water, healing trees, grass grows, animals come. We stopped on the way back for food and drink to keep going. We walked to the river a long, long way. We followed the path with friends and parents. Uncle Dave said, "Healing water, healing trees, grass grows, animals come." We walked to plant some trees. We dug holes, we planted trees, we put sticks next to the trees to hold them. We watered the trees to help them grow. We ate apples and scones. We picked up rubbish and put it in the bin. We drew pictures of the river. We walked a long, long way. We followed the path with friends and parents. From the river back to kinder. Healing water, healing trees, grass grows, animals come. And then we had our authors. And the authors of our book were Abby, Abigail, Avneet, Ben, Daniel, Darian, Elijah, Jacob, James, Jenna, Joanna, Joanne, Johnny, Amir Marty, Christina, Lara, Leo, Levi, Luca, Lucas, Matthew, Mia, Peter, Ria, Sam, Summer and Taylor. The end.
During Children's Week, Council Education and Care Services are celebrating childhood and showcasing children's voices throughout the neighbourhood projects. You keep clapping. The children from Avondale Heights Kindergarten have participated in this project by walking through our local parks and celebrating the Indigenous culture and heritage, which has led them to creating this lovely book that we just had a reading of, We Walk Together. So the book will be distributed to all the libraries and early childcare services in Moonee Valley as a teaching resource to educate children on Indigenous history and culture within the Moonee Valley area. I would now like to introduce Wendy, who was a teacher who did the wonderful speech, and we have team leaders from the Avondale Heights Kindergarten with us, and some of the children were involved. So thank you all for coming here and sharing this with us tonight. It was lovely for you to come in. Thank you very much. Councillors, can I please have a motion to resume standing orders? Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Cusack, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillors, petitions and joint letters. Do we have any petitions or joint letters tonight to be tabled? No. Public questions. I now ask the CEO, Brian Lancaster, whether we have received any public questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, we have 5 questions tonight, and the Director of City Services will answer those questions.
Thank you. Could you read out the questions?
Thank you. I'm not sure who asked them. Is Michelle Dowdle in the gallery? Thanks, Michelle. So the questions I have from Michelle, the building condition was a key reason to relocate the Strathmore Heights Kindergarten, and it's now structurally sound and will last if the vote passes. What guarantee do we have that we won't be fighting the closure of Strathmore Heights Kinder in 2, 5 or 10 years' time? Unfortunately, we're not able to make any guarantees about what will happen in the future. The decision to relocate Strathmore Heights Kindergarten was based on facility assessments undertaken in 2011 that found the building was nearing the end of its life, as well as the redevelopment of Stage 2 of the Strathmore Children's Centre, which would have allowed for better facilities and a one-stop shop for families. However, due to unforeseen delays with Stage 2 of the redevelopment, the relocation was put off. It's important to note that the independent building audits conducted last month support assessments undertaken in 2011 that the condition of the building is poor and nearing the end of its life. However, they did suggest that the life of the building could be extended through significant maintenance works and modifications. The second question was, the 2018 building reports conclude overall that it's structurally sound and an average condition rating fair to poor. Only external fabric is poor. Do you agree that Strathmore Heights Kinder is no longer in poor condition, or at the end of its useful life, in contrast to page 68 of the agenda. The building reports from both 2011 and 2018 rate the condition of Strathmore Heights Kindergarten building as in fair to poor condition and nearing the end of its life. However, the recent building reports suggest that with significant maintenance and investment, the building can be brought up to a condition where services can continue to be run out of the facility. The second set of questions were from Kim, was it Buckley or Buckley? Kim? Thank you, Kim. So the question was around the total spent on Strathnova Reserve redevelopment, including the sports pavilion, fencing, moving the cricket pitch, floodlights, and new car park. So the total spent on Strathnova Reserve redevelopment is just under $3.9 million in total. That includes for the pavilion, the lighting, the fencing and infrastructure, the renewal of the playing surface, the lower level car park, and the proposed upper level car park, which is in the budget for the 1920 financial year. The second question was...
I was just wondering what it does cost to provide a kindy teacher to the Strathmore Heights preschool.
Yep. So provide the cost of a preschool teacher. The average cost of a preschool teacher's salary per annum is just under $105,000, inclusive of super and all of their allowances. The last question I have is from Kelly Jansen. Is Kelly in the room? Kelly, would you like to read your question? Or if you go to the lectern, Kelly. Sorry. So I can't preempt Council's decision later on in the meeting. However, Council will continue to plan for a fully integrated early years centre at Term Street, and the services incorporated at the centre will be adjusted based on Council's decision regarding Strathmore Heights Kinder. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Stephen. You might have the wrong date here for the next public forum. I'd just like to take this opportunity to remind everyone about the next public forum, which will be held, I think, on October the 16th of November. I'll get back to you with the date in a minute. But the public forum is a great opportunity for members and the community to come and engage with the councillors and the officers and to ask any questions or have us investigate anything that you require without notice. And if we can't provide you with an answer, we will then definitely get you with a written response or a telephone call backwards. And what was the date of the next public forum? 20th of November. 20th of November is the next public forum. Yeah, so I've got the wrong date in my paperwork. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. So we'll go on to reports from special committees. Councillors, do we have any reports from special committees? No. So we'll go straight into the reports. 10.1 is 144 Pascoval Road, Moonee Ponds, use and development of land for a multi-level mixed-use building. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
A motion in the form of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nation. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the item?
Look, I will briefly, only because we considered a separate but similar application not that long ago, and this has a very extensive history. I think what we see before us is an improvement on the current planning permit which has been approved for the site. We're seeing fewer dwellings, which is positive, and also a better dwelling mix. So whereas previously it was predominantly one-bedroomers, we now have, I think it's 2 and 3 bedroomers. They've also consolidated the retail premises, so there won't be as large a retail space, and made some improvements to the streetscape. And we have 2 additional basement levels to provide car parking, and I think again that's a better outcome than the previous proposal with stackers. Importantly, the height remains at 4 stories, and that is important. It's actually slightly lower from the previous application. I think, much like last time we considered this, we have concerns, but I'm mindful about the conditions that have been included in this, and those conditions go not fully, but a significant way to addressing some of the concerns of residents in relation to the matters that were concerning them. So I think this is a situation that, on balance, I think that this is an application that has a high level of compliance and, you know, areas that it doesn't comply, but in light of where it is, in light of the existing permit and in light of the conditions that have been able to be imposed to deal with the particular issues of concern, that this is a development that we should support approving.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm obviously speaking in support of this recommendation, noting that we're not approving a new application. There is an existing endorsed application on this site, and this is an amendment, amended plans for that particular application. When comparing the two, in my opinion, this amended application has a lesser impact on the surrounding area, and you can see in the table on page 13 there is an increase in car spaces under these amended plans. The height drops by 30 centimetres. The dwelling stock is reduced as well, so it goes from 30 dwellings to 22, and introduces 10 three-bedder dwellings as well. And as Councillor Marshall alluded to, there's also a number of conditions that will hopefully lessen the amenity impacts on the surrounding residents. So if we were deciding on this as a new application, then possibly I would have the intention to refuse it, but given what is already endorsed on this site, comparing that to now what is before us, I'm of the opinion that what's before us is more sensitive to the area, and therefore have no issues supporting this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor to say a few words? As there is no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.2 on tonight's agenda is related to a planning application at 47 Fisher Parade, Ascot Vale. Councillors, do I have a motion?
I'll be departing the chamber
sorry,
due to a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Yes, your conflict of interest. Councillors, do I have a motion for 47 Fisher Parade?
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Marshall.
Mayor, I have been advised that I have to read out the whole thing, so get ready to rug yourself up in your blankets and have a coffee and whatever you need to do. I will read quickly and just slow down at some points. So move that councillors as a responsible authority issue a notice of decision to grant a permit in relation to planning permit application MB 350/2018 for the removal of vegetation and construction of buildings and works comprising 3 dwellings and fencing within a DDO, IPO, PAO and alter access to a road in Road 1, Category 1, Road Zone Category 1 at number 47 Fisher Parade, Ascot Vale, subject to the following conditions. 1, before the development starts, amended plans to the satisfaction of the responsible authority must be submitted to and approved by the responsible authority. The amended plans must be drawn to scale with dimensions and an electronic copy must be provided. The amended plans must be generally in accordance with the plans submitted and assessed with the application, but modified to show, I'll slow down here, all sections of dwelling 3 at the lower level, including the pool and open deck, are to be set back outside of the public acquisition overlay with associated internal changes. B, compliance with the minimum garden requirement of clause 3208(4) of the GRZ. C, the maximum height of a fence within 30 metres of the Maribyrnong River, measured from the junction with the top of the bank of the Maribyrnong River, must not exceed 1.2 metres in height and be visually permeable. D, provision of swept path diagrams undertaken using an industry recognised software package demonstrating vehicles entering, exiting car spaces on site in a forwards direction with no more than 3 movements, taking into account supports and potential safety fencing for the car stack system within the garage for dwelling 3. E, provision of a longitudinal section from the road to the car park areas, garages that shows all proposed grades, all lengths of grades and all levels to determine if vehicle scraping will occur. F, details and specifications regarding the type of car stacker proposed within the garage for dwelling 3 to ensure a car stacker meets the minimum requirements of 5206 and or relevant Australian standards, noting the specified car stacker system no longer appears to be available. G, no access provided into the car stacker pit room area. H, the provision of pedestrian visibility displays in accordance with the requirements of 52069 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. I, details and notations of all the WSUD treatment measures in accordance with the storm rating report required under condition 3 of this permit. J, all sustainable design, assessment and or built environment sustainability scorecard. Annotations and measures in accordance with clause 26 of this permit. A landscape plan in accordance with clause 20 of this permit. And a detailed schedule of all external materials and finishes. The schedule must show the specific material, colour, finishes of all external walls, roofing fascias, window frames, screening measures, soffits, garage doors, fences and paving. When approved, these plans will be endorsed and will form part of this permit. Sorry, I do apologise for everyone's eyes glazing over. 2, the development as shown on the endorsed plans must not be altered without the written consent of the RA. 3, a storm rating report must be submitted simultaneously with the submission of amended plans in accordance with condition 1, the storm rating. Must obtain a minimum water rating of 100% to comply with clause 22034 stormwater management of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. Minimum 30 days prior to any building or works commencing, all WSUD details relating to the WSUD treatment measures, nominating the approved and complying storm reports such as cross-sections and or specifications to assess the technical effectiveness of the proposed stormwater measures must be submitted for approval by the responsible authority. 5, and don't worry, we've only got 30 conditions. 5, a minimum 30 days prior to any building or works commencing, a WSUD site management plan must be submitted to and approved by the RA detailing the site and environmental management methods to be used. Plan must include, but is not limited to, a statement or report outlining all construction measures to be taken to prevent litter, sediments and pollution from entering the stormwater systems. Once submitted and approved, the works detailed by the WSUD site management plan must be carried out to the satisfaction of the RA. 6, a maximum 30 days following completion of the development, a maintenance program must be submitted to and approved by the RA, which sets out future operational and maintenance arrangements for all WSUD measures. This program must include, but is not limited to, inspection frequency, clean-out procedures, as installed design details, diagrams, including a sketch of how the system operates, and D, a report confirming completion and commissioning of all WSUD response treatment measures written by the author of the response storm or music model approved pursuant to this permit or licence, installing, commissioning, plumber and or similarly qualified person or company. This report must be to the satisfaction of the RA and must confirm that all WSUD treatment measures specified in the WSUD response and storm or music model have been completed and implemented in accordance with the approved report. The maintenance program may form part of a broader maintenance program that covers other aspects of maintenance such as a builder's guide or building maintenance guide. 7, before the buildings approved by this permit are occupied, all retaining walls and boundary walls must be cleaned and finished to the satisfaction of the RA if the occupier of the adjoining lands allows access for the purpose. 8, building or works must not be constructed over and adjacent to any easement or within 1 metre of an existing council drainage without the prior written consent of council or of the authorities or agencies with an interest in the easement to the satisfaction of the RA. 9, floor levels shown on the endorsed plans must not be altered or modified without the prior written consent of the RA. 10, before the buildings approved by this permit are occupied, the privacy screens and or measures to prevent overlooking as shown on the endorsed plans must be installed in accordance with clause 55046, overlooking of the planning scheme to the satisfaction of the RA. All privacy screens and other measures to prevent overlooking as shown on the endorsed plans must at all times be maintained to the satisfaction of the RA. 11, all pipes, fixtures, fittings, ducts and vent servicing any building on the land other than stormwater downpipes and gutters above the ground floor story of the building must be concealed in service ducts or otherwise hidden from view to the satisfaction of the RA. 12, before the buildings approved by this permit are occupied, The area set aside for the parking of vehicles together with the associated driveways and access lanes as shown on the endorsed plans must be A, constructed, B, available for use in accordance with the endorsed plans, C, properly formed to such levels and drained so that they can be used in accordance with the endorsed plans, and D, finished with a permanent trafficable surface such as concrete, asphalt or paving in accordance with the endorsed plans to the satisfaction of the RA. The area set aside for the parking of vehicles together with the associated driveways and access lanes as shown on the endorsed plan must E, be maintained and made available for such use, and F, not be used for any other purpose to the satisfaction of the RA. 13. Before the buildings approved by this permit are occupied, concrete vehicular crossings must be constructed to suit the proposed driveways in accordance with the RA specifications, and any obsolete, disused or redundant vehicle crossings must be removed, and the area reinstated to footpath, nature strip and curb and channel to the satisfaction of the RA. All vehicle access points must be located a minimum of 1 metre from any infrastructure including service pits. Alternatively, such assets may be incorporated into the crossover with the prior written consent of the responsible authority and relevant servicing authority agency. Subsequent works and costs in association with the relocation amendment must be incurred at the owner's cost to the satisfaction of the relevant servicing authority and agency and RA. Hope everyone's enjoying. 14. Provision must be made for the drainage of the land, including landscaped and pavement areas. The discharge of water from the land must be controlled around its limits to prevent any discharge onto any adjoining or adjacent property or streets other than by means of an underground pipe drain which is discharged to an approved legal point of discharge to the satisfaction of the RA. 15. Vic Roads conditions. Prior to the commencement of the use of the development hereby approved, all disused or redundant vehicle crossings must be removed and the area reinstated to the satisfaction of the RA and at no cost to Vic Roads or the RA. 16. Prior to the commencement of the use or the occupation of the buildings or works hereby approved, the access, crossover and associated works must be provided and available for use. 17. Vehicles must enter and exit the land in a forward direction at all times. And Vic Road conditions, City West Water conditions. It is essential the owner of the land enters into an agreement with City West Water for the provision of water supply. 19. It is essential the owner of the land enters into an agreement with City West Water for the provision of sewerage. In City West Water conditions. 20. Building or works must not be commenced and trees or vegetation must not be removed until a landscape plan prepared by a suitably qualified and experienced person or firm has been submitted to and approved by the responsible authority. The landscape plans must show A, the title boundaries and easements, B, the top of bank, high and low water marks of the Maribyrnong River as determined by a licensed land surveyor in consultation with Melbourne Water. C, retention of all mature trees between the building line and Maribyrnong River and replacement of any non-native trees with mature native canopy trees at locations agreed to by the RA. D, a survey of all existing vegetation, abutting street trees, natural features and vegetation, buildings, outbuildings and trees in neighbouring allotments that would affect the landscape design. F, the location of any earthworks to be undertaken in association with the removal of vegetation between the building envelope and the Maribyrnong River and propose measures to ensure stability of the bank and prevent erosion during construction and vegetation establishment stages. G, a planting schedule for the land including species, densities and distributions and comprising trees and shrubs including planting that 1. Provides a complete garden scheme across all vegetation strata. 2. Softens the building bulk. 3. Provides canopy trees for landscape perspective within the front and rear setback areas with species to be generally in accordance with the Maribyrnong River Interface Urban Design Guidelines. Selected canopy trees must be capable of reaching a mature height, minimum height of 4 metres. 4. Minimises the potential of any overlooking between habitable rooms of adjacent dwellings. 5. Protects the stability of the banks of the Maribyrnong River and existing bank treatments. And 6. Achieves a vegetated wildlife corridor for habitat and waterway protection. H. The proposed design features such as paths, paving, lawn, facing, garden, furniture and mulch, and the proposed surface finishes and treatment of these. Sorry, I'm just trying to work out that condition. I just want to clarify that. Maybe I'm becoming delirious reading these out. Okay, that's fine. Sorry, yep. I, a planting schedule of all proposed vegetation, trees, shrubs and ground covers, which includes botanical names, common names, pot size, mature size and total quantities of each plant, J, the use of drought-tolerant species. K, all trees on the land that are proposed to be removed or destroyed. L, the use of non-invasive plant species within any easements, which will ensure that existing infrastructure assets are not damaged by root systems. And M, the proposed approach to ongoing maintenance and management of the vegetation, including method, timing and organisation of vegetation maintenance. Landscaping in accordance with this approved plan and permit must be completed before the building is occupied. Once approved by the RA, these plans become part of the endorsed plans of this permit. 21. Landscaping works must be maintained in accordance with the approved landscape plan unless otherwise agreed by the RA. 22. The garden areas shown on the endorsed plan and schedule must only be used as garden areas and must be constructed completely and properly, maintained in a proper, tidy and healthy condition to the satisfaction of the RA. Any tree or shrub damaged, removed or destroyed must be replaced by a tree or shrub of similar size and variety to the RA. 23. Before the buildings approved by this permit are occupied, all boundary fencing is to be constructed in accordance with the endorsed plans at the cost of the permit holder to the satisfaction of the RA. 24. Except with the prior written consent of the RA, equipment, services or other building features other than those shown on the endorsed plans must not be erected above the roof level of the buildings. 25. The development must be provided with external lighting capable of illuminating access to each garage, car parking and pedestrian walkways. Lighting must be located, directed and shielded and of limited intensity so that no nuisance or loss of amenity is caused to any person within or beyond the land. 26. Prior to the commencement of building and works, a sustainable design assessment using BESS or another approved assessment tool for assessing the sustainability of new development must be submitted to the RA for approval. Once approved, the sustainable design assessment, inclusive of any BESS report, is to be implemented and appropriately managed during construction of the proposed buildings. 27. The existing street tree to the east of the subject site along Fisher Parade must not be removed or damaged as a result of the permitted development except with the prior written consent of the RA. 28. Immediately upon the discovery of any Aboriginal cultural material, works must cease and Aboriginal Affairs Victoria must be notified of the discovery. 29. This permit will expire if A, the development does not start within 2 years of the date of issue of this permit, or B, the development is not completed within 4 years of the date of issue of this permit. Before the permit expires or within 6 months afterwards, the owner or occupier of the land may make a written request to the RA to extend the expiry date. If the development commences before the permit expires, within 12 months after the permit expires, the owner or occupier of the land may make a written request to the RA to extend the expiry date. 30. That the applicant enter into negotiations with Melbourne Water to work towards an outcome that satisfies Melbourne Water's achievement of the purpose and decision guidelines set out in Schedule 1 and 2 to the DDO within the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. Permit notes. This is not a building permit under the Building Act. A separate building permit is required to be obtained for any demolition or building works. Before the development starts, the permit holder must contact Moonee Valley City Council on 9243 8888 regarding legal point of discharge, vehicular crossings, building over easements, asset protection, road consent, occupancy, etc. No on-street parking permits will be provided to the occupiers of the land. All works undertaken within any existing road reserves must accord with the requirements of the Moonee Valley City Council and be to the satisfaction of the RA. Existing levels along the property line and easements must be maintained. All property levels must match to existing surface levels along the property boundary and or easement. Council will not accept any modifications to existing levels within any road reserve or easement. And no work must be commenced in, on, under or over the road reserve without first having obtained all necessary approval under the Road Management Act 2004, the Road Safety Act 1986 and any other relevant acts or regulations created under those acts.
Thank you, Councillor. Could you just reread from point 2?
Yeah, no problems. I might go right back to the start because I hope everyone got that as I was reading it out.
That's all right. Councillor, I'll see if I can get a seconder for you. Councillor Cusack, Councillor Marshall, would you like to now speak to the item?
If I've got any speaking left. Can I just make the point, as the person who really pushed live streaming and who was told that I had to read that out because of live streaming, I am reconsidering my decision to push live streaming. So, this is a very interesting situation, and It's a situation where 2 times previously, once in a permit process and then in an approval process, this application has been approved. So officers have done the assessment, gone through and said, yep, that's fine. And it's fair to say that as a councillor, from my time on council, I have spent a not insignificant amount of time focusing on issues related to Fisher Parade, contemplating developments, as I know other previous councillors will have, and even before my time on council, looking at the various developments that have occurred, mostly losing in VCAT. In fact, I think it's always losing in VCAT, in relation to developments that we have tried to say no to. So I think I give that as context to say that when I considered this application, that as with other councillors who have dealt with Fisher Parade applications, we have a good understanding of the area. And we have a good understanding of the existing built form and what is allowable down there. The changes that came in with the DDO around the height controls. We have had numerous discussions around the very extensive and large built form, and it is fair to say, without a single hesitation of doubt, that VCAT has said very clearly, and our officers have said very clearly, that the existing built form that is down at Fisher Parade is okay. So no one can dispute that. But the main issue of contention here is the issue in relation to the public acquisition overlay, and that's why the condition requiring that ground level to be removed and shifted out of the PAO has been included. And I think I'm really mindful here that councillors have acknowledged that they've done a 180 on this particular issue of the public acquisition overlay, and that's as they're entitled to do. We're all entitled to change our mind about something. But when it was considered in the permit and the extension in recent times, obviously officers did the assessment, and they, having done the assessment, looked at the development and I thought, well, you know what, that's actually okay. And you can see why they might have said that, not just with obviously the initial permit application, but also in the extension. They would have had to consider that too. They would have done that because, again, when you have familiarity with how Fisher Parade works, with the existing buildings, with the very significant encroachments up to the riverbank, with the fact that it narrows in parts and then widens in parts, then you have an understanding of how it is likely that any plan to create a linear path and to create space along there might work. And it is going to be incredibly difficult and incredibly challenging because there are very large buildings currently sitting close to the riverbank, currently sitting within the public acquisition overlay. So, as I said, I acknowledge that officers are entitled to change their mind, as are councillors, and that's why if we say that the reality is I find it difficult as I think about the topography and the gradients here and the way that both north and south it narrows in parts and you have those encroachments, to think that we will actually have to veer up into this land to such a significant extent, but at least by having that bottom area, that ground floor set back outside the public acquisition overlay, we have that option, as unlikely as it may need to be. I think it will provide us with a level of flexibility, and by requiring Melbourne Water and the applicant to talk about the appropriate plantings in that last condition that was inserted, again, that will enable that opportunity to make sure that we have good outcomes here, and probably, frankly, 1,000,000 times better outcomes than what is currently down there, given all of the development that has gone on. So I think I'm very pleased to see officers appreciating the, I might just a brief extension. I won't go too much longer. I'm very clear to see this additional appreciation of the river. As I said, it's something that I've banged on about for some period of time. But this is a development that has been approved previously, and the public acquisition overlay has been there forever and a day. There is some additional sensitivity around the river, quite rightly so, but this, by removing it back from the public acquisition overlay, by requiring Melbourne Water sit down and talk with the applicant and come to some agreement, I don't see how this will damage the river health. I really don't. So on that basis, I am happy to move this motion to support.
Thank you. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor, and I support the motion that has been provided to Council for consideration by Councillor Marshall on the basis that the proposed development is one that had been given an okay, and that through a number of circumstances there had been delays. Unfortunately, when we got to the point of looking at it with the lens of 2018, there were additional new provisions that were come into play, in particular in relation to the Maribyrnong, and in particular through Melbourne Water. And these are important considerations in the total life of the river, and yes, we would like to see them all implemented to their 100%. But there's also a reality that Fisher Parade over time has not been developed with that lens applied, and that we see a number of developments along there that, while they might technically fall into the line with the PAO, they have not necessarily given us the opportunity to create a pristine, back to the original type of river and riverbank that it was. So what we've got to work with now is that reality of development that has come down from a number of developments along Fisher Parade that back up to the PAO. What we've tried to do here through this alternative motion is provide the opportunity for, as Councillor Marshall says, for some discussion, and hopefully a confident discussion between both the developer and Melbourne Water, and taking into account, of course, the comments that have been made through VCAT over time about the river and an application of the DDO. I suppose also there's in the design that has been okayed in this, there will always be a level of some redesign and practical application of what that might look like and how it might unfold. But what we've in fact tried to do is restore the ground level and get that working, and so that there is an opportunity to do and achieve some of the to achieve the major thing of the PAO, which is to do that connection between the green spaces that are along the river, and the Thornbury Reserve, and up to the golf course and the likes of that. So I commend this motion to you, hoping that you consider it as an opportunity to create some middle ground that gives some flexibility to the people who have for a long time desired to develop this alongside the people who have already had the opportunity to develop. And noting that, of course, that the connectivity question is really critical. As raised earlier in a conversation, there are now plans for new hospitals and the likes of that on the other side of the river, and the growth of VU, etc. And we do need alternative bike paths, walking paths, and the likes of that. And somehow we need to get a mesh of these things working in a very difficult space that has been changed quite dramatically over time.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I begin, can I just ask a couple of points of clarification to one of the directors, or to the CEO, or to whoever the appropriate? Sure. First one being, has this application been approved twice?
Thank you, and through you, Mr Mayor. No, the application was approved at council. The applicant sought an extension, as in about 99% of all cases, the application was given an extension of time. Council officers certainly don't consider that a second approval.
Okay. And Councillor Marshall brought up that we lost in VCAT, and according to the report, I don't believe that's the case for 7 Fisher Parade. If I can have clarification on that.
The application was determined under delegation at council. The application was challenged at VCAT by Melbourne Water, and a negotiated or mediated outcome was resolved at VCAT between Melbourne Water and the applicant.
Thank you. Can I start now? I'm just noting the time's already ticking.
I'll give
Thank
you
you.
an extension.
And can I have an extension of time on that? I'm just flagging I may need it. It's always difficult when someone thinks they can develop their property in a particular way and find out they cannot. Indeed, often in this chamber, people come along and listen to their planning application being considered by council, and for a variety of reasons, council refuses the application. There have been many instances in the past years where officers recommended an approval and councillors have refused. In this case, the applicant felt their application would be approved because it had been approved previously. However, the applicant was advised in February that their application had lapsed and future application would need to reflect the changes in the planning scheme arising from the provisions and design outcomes sought by the DDO, which affects the subject site. As a councillor, I must make my decision based on the policy available today, and as such, I cannot support the alternate motion to approve. My belief is this development would severely impact the open space along the Maribyrnong River, and as such, determine the pose will have a significant negative social impact in terms of all the runners, walkers and everyone else who will use the path. It is my understanding that as such, I understand there's no path, but there is plans in all of our planning that there will be a path, and with big infrastructure projects such as the new hospital that's coming online, it's widely known that we need to be having bike routes for commuters and whatnot. So it's over 5 years since this permit was first approved by council for 3 dwellings on the site, and 2 years since it's been expired. There's been a lot that has changed in this time, and we have to make decisions based on current planning controls. And there has been a strengthening over 5 years of state and local planning policies and strategies, including MV 2040, which have been achieved through significant advocacy efforts from council. In terms of what I've heard in the chamber tonight, I understand that this is quite a touchy subject, but the thought that nothing has changed is just incorrect. As already mentioned by the director, last year in this council, in October 2017, interestingly enough, moved by Councillor Marshall and seconded by Councillor Cusack, 7 Fisher Parade was carried unanimously by council and refused based on various things which would fit perfectly in with this, including encroachment.
Sorry.
Excuse me? No, well, we didn't lose.
We did lose.
No, we
go to
just...
hearing,
Sorry,
so it
guys.
was a
Sorry,
mediated
guys.
outcome. Sorry,
keep
apologies.
going, Councillor.
Okay, well, just as a point of clarification to the director, did we lose?
No, we did not lose at VCAT. There was a mediated outcome, but which is not considered as a
Point
loss.
of clarification, did we win? No.
Did we win is the question for clarification.
It was a mediated outcome.
It was a mediated outcome.
And my understanding is the building was on top of current, what the current existing dwelling was, so it wasn't further encroaching into the PAO.
That's correct.
Whereas this one is further encroaching into the PAO.
Continue, Councillor.
So we have various things that were carried unanimously by this council for another property on Fisher Parade in terms of the encroachment. The development does not achieve a sufficient setback from the Maribyrnong River and river environments. Proposed development will limit Melbourne Water's current and future ability to maintain and rehabilitate the riparian area of the bank of the Maribyrnong River. The development is inconsistent with state policy and planning. All of these...
I ask you just probably refer just to the application. Not,
yep, but
not
what I'm saying is that this very council sitting in here today moved this unanimously on the same street.
I think you made the point.
And yet for something else on the same street, we're not going ahead with it. And I haven't been able to hear any reasons as to the fact that it was 5 years ago, before planning has changed, that has come on board. Further to that, I would like to add, just one moment. Now, please forgive me because I wasn't able to hear, well, I heard all 30 things, but my understanding is that the ground floor is being set back out of the PIO, but there'll be about 6 metres, my understanding, over the public open space, over the area. So that's going to be really interesting to handle both in an engineering way. But the current application, whilst being reduced by a little bit, on the ground floor has a living room, a family room, a games room, a theatre room, a gymnasium and a workshop area and the lap pool. So it's not like we're talking about a small dwelling. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask the applicant to go away and create a smaller dwelling which is completely outside of the PAO. I think that that's more common sense should be prevalent here because quite clearly this application can seriously be reduced in size and be compliant, and it's not. The applicant can meet planning needs, but they've chosen not to, and testing the waters, so to say. So I have a choice tonight, and that is to reject this alternative motion and do my very best and protect the river, or I can support a development which has been rejected by officers, rejected by Melbourne Water, and rejected by the respective Friends of the Waterways groups. I think everyone needs to have a really hard think about this one because for me, it's a no-brainer. We need to protect the environment over supporting a development.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be quick. I was quite happy to support Councillor Marshall's request to call in this application to allow for councillor input into this decision. I note that much has been spoken about the circumstances surrounding this application and the previous application, but I will just refer to my thoughts on the proposal. To cut a very, very long story short, if we rejected this application, how would it actually benefit the health of the river? Personally, I don't believe it would. Based on developments already constructed around this site, which many extend right down to the river, the precedent of constructing within the public acquisition overlay already exists. So the horse has already bolted. So it's done. I do note Councillor Marshall's attempts with this alternative to limit the construction of the ground floor level so it does not impact the POA. I congratulate Councillor Marshall for working through this application to allow for a development which respects the intention of the PAO, and I'm happy to support this alternative.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gauci-Marici.
Again, just very briefly, but for me, this is a really complex and difficult issue that I actually genuinely see both sides of. And I sit here now halfway through the debate and I still don't know which way to vote. I still don't know where I fall. I sit there and I, on one hand, see that the permit expired in 2016, and at the time the applicants were advised to resubmit an application to reflect the new provisions and the new aspects of those planning provisions. The plans that we've had resubmitted are still the same ones that are dated in 2012 with no amendments. Melbourne Water confirmed that that advised the applicants the plan needed to respond to those overlays, and again no changes have been made and Melbourne Water still object. The properties which do encroach weren't approved recently, they were 10 and 20 years ago, and we're in a position where we have actively, through all our strategies and policies, seek to protect our waterways and access to the areas surrounding them. But the other side of that for me is these plans were previously approved, including the encroachment into the PAO. Other properties along that waterfront also encroach into the PAO. And the bit that my decision has to hinge on at this point is I genuinely don't understand the way the line and the depth of the PAO on this particular property works to that triangle point as far as it does. So for me, I genuinely see both sides, and I genuinely am conflicted as to how I make a decision on this one. What I can see in my heart of hearts is that we've tried to come to a compromise solution, which is something that I have spent most of my 2 years on council trying to come to compromise solutions for applicants and residents. Look, I'm genuinely not sure how the cantilever aspect of this building will work, or I'm not sure how that will impact on the design for the applicants. I don't know how that impacts their design. But for me, this is a compromise solution where everyone can walk away with some level of comfort. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it would be remiss if I didn't. So, given the passion that seems to exist for this application, my first thoughts are about public access to rivers, creeks, beaches, and so forth. And in Victoria, we seem to have a higher priority for those very issues, and I applaud our state, and that goes back a long way in Victoria, that we've always endeavoured to have public access to the riverbank, to the beach front, to the creek front, to the lake front, and I think that's a great aspect to our state. Whereas in other states, New South Wales and I think in Queensland, I'm not totally sure, but there's not the same priority given to that access, and there's often a loss of public access to rivers, lakes, beaches and creeks as a consequence. Not totally, but just in part, where public land has become private, and that's a sad reflection on maybe the legislative planning that goes on in those states. Having said all that, this Moonee Valley is endeavouring to adhere to the public acquisition overlay that has come into play, and especially along this section of the Maribyrnong River, and where there has been encroachment on that over the last 20 years for whatever reasons that this council has taken, we're stuck with that, and we can't change that for what it is. This application is, I guess, trying to come to a compromise, and that's what everybody is trying to get their head around, and where does that compromise fit within the context of what Councillor Marshall's suggesting. It's not an easy one to get your head around, particularly as a councillor making a decision on this very issue. And we're all at angst to say, well, we do want public access. There has been issues with the application. There are stressful issues for the applicant involved. However, there's also the thought in the back of my mind that when you do make application and for development particularly, there is a risk involved. Everybody knows that, and that the applicant even knows that. So that's the part and parcel of what you're doing, and you have to face that as a fact of life, and a fact of what you're trying to do. So having said all that, I'm concerned about the amount of the cantilever access that will overlie the public acquisition area, and how that falls in terms of the engineering aspect. But and I think it's if I could just refer back to the notes, 5.75. I think it is 5.76 metre cantilever that comes out over the PAO area. That is significant, and I would have liked to have preferred to seen that to be far less, if it was possible. And I don't know enough about engineering, but if there was a chance for it to be less, I would have liked to have seen that. I don't know whether at this point, and I know time is limited, Mr. Mayor, whether I can put up foreshadow a motion at this point. Okay. I'd just like to add that.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm happy. Is this a request to reduce that cantilever at the second level? Is that what you're after? Because if you want to consider it as part of this motion as
If you want to make an amendment, that.
If you want to consider that.
Yes, I would like to.
What would you like the amendment to read?
Well, at the moment we've got 5.76, I think it is. If I could have clarification, because the writing on this plan is not very good.
Yeah, it's 5.76.
Thank you. Well,
so you'd like another dot point form saying to look at ways of reducing the cantilever?
Correct. Well, I don't have a particular figure in my mind.
The amount to be determined in consultation with
I think so, and with Melbourne Water, and so that we can get a feasible outcome for all parties and councillors. I mean, it's very difficult to come up.
I'll just get the wording for you. Tracy, could we just have some wording up on the screen with that? So what would you suggest, Councillor Marshall?
Well, I'm open to Councillor Marshall making a suggestion. Here was her original motion.
So if we said that the applicant, actually, Mayor, can I move that we have a short adjournment just to get the wording right?
Sure, okay. I'm happy to suspend standing orders. Councillor Sharp? Adjournment for 5 minutes. Okay, I'll have an adjournment for about 5 minutes to get the wording correct. So Councillor Sharp, Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you.
All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We're back in 5 minutes. Thank you for the short brief, but we're back on deck now. So, councillors, do I have a motion to come back to normal procedure? Councillor Sharp, Councillor Gauci-Marucci, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. So, who has the amended words? Councillor Lawrence. Would you like to read out your amended words, Councillor Lawrence?
I'll just get them, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. The amendment would be applying to the first condition and coming in at point B, and would read as follows: reduce the cantilever at the upper levels for no more than 3 metres with the associated internal modifications. So that would move every other condition from 1B, A, B, pushing them all down C, D, F. So
thank you.
Could we bring that up?
Can that be brought up? So while we're waiting for it to come up, can I get the mover and seconder happy with the Okay, we need a seconder. We need a seconder for Councillor Lawrence's amendment. Councillor Sharp. So now, do we ask the mover and seconder of the original motion? No. So we go to the vote now? Okay, so we go to the vote to accept the amendment. Okay, we'll wait till it comes up on screen. Pardon? Just put it to the vote. That's what our procedures say.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, can I just have a point of clarification why we're not debating the amendment?
At the moment, there's just, a short delay whilst the amendment is put up on screen. It can then be debated and voted on as normal. I think it's now up on screen, is that correct? Yep.
Right, so, Councillor Lawrence, could you just reiterate which part that you've in?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's Part B, 1B, and it reads, reduce the cantilever at the upper levels for no more than 3 metres with associated internal modifications.
Okay, and we've got Councillor Sharp as a seconder. So would you like to speak to the item?
Look, I think I've spoken to the details of why I want the change, and I guess we're coming up with a compromise to meet both the PAO as well as the restrictions being placed on the applicant to reduce the impact of the development on the PAO going forward, and coming up with a compromise is possibly the best result, I would think, for both the applicant and for the council going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you to Councillor Lawrence for his alternative. I would probably be more comfortable with not having an actual metre figure in there, but happy to support it considering the intention for the motion, and I prefer to see this compromise go through rather than be rejected.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm really confused about this whole cantilever situation. I think that it's an engineering nightmare, and I think that even though the ground level isn't in the PAO, having that space will be in the PAO. So you might have someone, the way I'm understanding it, is someone sitting on the level 1, and if that land, we take that land, we'll be able to walk in and under them and have a picnic underneath them. Am I right? Can I just ask that as a point of clarification?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. It may well be that should this proceed in this form, that when the property is acquired, instead of the 21.5 metres of the full PAO, it may well be negotiated to be somewhat less than that, so that that outcome doesn't eventuate.
So it's effectively still going into the PAO then?
That's correct.
Right. Yeah, in airspace. Okay. I commend Councillor Lawrence. I think that it's 3 metres is better than 6, but I think that the precedent that this is going to set for the city, in terms of normally what we work towards is having the structure, and we work so hard in this chamber working on setbacks so things are not overlooking space, or people can have their private area to be able to walk along the creek or bike right over the creek. This is doing the reverse, and to me, again, it just seems a little bit crazy. And if this one goes through as a cantilever, or whatever size it may be, it's going to be really interesting to see what other cantilevers we have in the municipality if it's something that council is going to endorse. But 3 metres better than 6, but yikes. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Cusack.
I'd prefer to see any cantilever designed and be a real response to what is there, rather than being dictated by what might or might not be a distance and so on like that. We need to consider what this actual property looks like and what is actually there. There is a significant fall at the back of that property. It is not just you've got a whole issue around how whatever might be developed there by way of a boardwalk or the likes of that. It is not ever going to be a pristine return to the Maribyrnong River type of environment. This is a built-up area that has been used for horse training and all that sort of stuff for years and years and years. And across the road, you've got the Edgewater Basin. Across the river, you've got the Edgewater Basin, which completely makes a mockery of what the river looks like and how it operates down there. And I just consider that we might, in fact, have a much more flexible approach and talk about a seriously well-designed approach to that cantilever, rather than prescribing what might be an arbitrary amount or distance.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? I will then go back to Councillor Lawrence for closing. No? Just go straight to the vote? All right, councillors, I'll put that to the vote for the amendments. All those in favour? All those...
Sorry, I'll read the names just for the record. We have Councillor Sharp, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Gauci-Marici, Councillor Lawrence.
All those against?
Councillor Byrne, Councillor Cusack.
Okay, passed. So now do we go back to the original motion with the amendment?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, does everyone get to speak again on that? No, so only for closing. Only for councillors who haven't spoken to the original alternative can speak now to the item. And that leaves Councillor Gauci-Marici.
No,
you've
Rebecca.
spoken?
Councillor.
Is that everyone spoken?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you were speaking, so you can he finish? Even though he moved? He has the right of reply. He doesn't have a reply. All right, so then all I can do is close, is that correct? Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak?
Sorry, can I just confirm through you, Governance Chair, whether there is a right of reply?
Yeah.
Mayor, I'd ask that you exercise your discretion as the chair of this meeting and the one ultimately controlling it, being mindful about the fact that discretion
I think
is
that this is
important.
such a contentious issue. I think I don't want to be seen to be gagging anyone, so I'm happy for allowing Councillor Marshall to have a right of reply.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, but I just wanted to confirm through the meeting procedures, through governance, whether that's...
So you
right.
want me to gag Councillor Marshall? Is that what you want me to do?
No, I don't want you to gag. I just want you to go with what's in the meeting procedures.
I'm happy to let her talk.
Thank you, Mayor,
Go
for
ahead.
exercising your discretion.
Sorry,
again,
the director's trying to speak. I'm not sure whether you're going to let the director
I'm chairing the
speak.
meeting, not the director. So I'm giving Councillor Marshall discretion to close the meeting and I want to make sure that everyone has a right to saying everything they need to say about this application, because everyone has to have a right to talk.
Even though it's against our meeting procedures, that's fine.
sorry, who's chairing the meeting? Thank you, Mayor.
I'm chairing the
Appreciate
meeting.
You are indeed.
Thank you.
And it is appreciated because... so thank you, councillors. I acknowledge this is not difficult, and I acknowledge this is difficult, I should say. And I acknowledge too that we are all trying to do our best. I suppose when I think and reflect on the involvement as a councillor that I've had in matters at Fisher Parade, every one of those we have either lost or we have had a mediated outcome, which is not a win. And anyone who suggests otherwise is not interpreting what the VCAP process is. Sitting down, trying to come up with compromises is a mediated outcome. And that is, in a sense, what we are trying to do here. We are trying to look at what is an appropriate outcome in light of the constraints, in light of the existing conditions. And that is the sense that is frustrating me a bit about this, because it feels like people are looking at this as one property, totally ignoring everything else that has gone on either side, north, south, as Councillor Cusack has indicated, west, and just pretending that this is something that it is not, because this is a developed, built-out area where the ship has long sailed down the Maribyrnong to try and say that you cannot have developments of this type. And that is just the reality. And, you know, I've tried, as I said, in my early times as a councillor, and, you know, other councillors who are here no doubt rolled their eyes and thought, Nicole, good one. But we tried and we failed repeatedly. And that is just the reality. Councillor Sharp really hit the nail on the head. How approving the development in this particular form with the compromises and Councillor Lawrence's amendment and the requirement to work with Melbourne Water, how is that going to be detrimental to the health of the river? How is it? Because it won't anymore. This will not be detrimental to the river. Yes, sorry. Because to try and pretend that this is something other than what it is just kidding yourself. So I would rather try and look at some compromises, look at some ways to get better outcomes than just, you know, pretend, as I said, that what's there is not there. And respectfully, I say that some of the comments tonight have shown a lack of understanding about the topography and the way that the land sits and what is likely to happen in the event that the public acquisition overlay is exercised. Because by the fact that you have got buildings both upstream and downstream that are so close to the riverbank, you look at the way the river narrows in parts, you look at all of these constraints, and are we really going to go where there is a significant gradient on this land? And as Councillor Gauci-Marici pointed out, that it cuts much more into this land than what it does in any other land, any other site, either up or downstream in this section. We are not going to have a path that goes along and then all of a sudden veer up into this property. It just would be ridiculous. And as I said, we need to have some common sense to this. We need to think about what is going to happen. And it brings me to my other point, Mayor. I'm so pleased that this has been brought to a head in some ways, because for years nothing has been done about this public acquisition overlay. There's all this talk, and that's great. And then at this point in time, all of a sudden, there is this sense around, you know, we need to do something, and we do, we need to act. So I'm sick of talking about it. I'm sick of having these arguments that go nowhere. We need to start having a proper plan, and I expect then a report will be brought back by officers as a matter of urgency, and we need to start doing what needs to be done to develop this, because I'm sick of having these arguments and discussions, and Councillor Cusack and I have discussed it numerous times.
Would you like to close, Councillor?
I am closing, sorry, Mayor. I'm almost there. Thank you for your indulgence. Look, just one thing briefly. I'm really mindful, as I said, that this is a difficult decision, but we need to think about what the river looks like in this section. We need to think about, be practical. We need to try and come to some sort of agreement that is not, you know, it's a compromise in a sense. And as I said, that's what we've constantly had. And this will not be, this is significantly better than a hell of a lot of the other developments down there. That is absolutely not in doubt at all. So on that note, I will close.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour?
Councillor Sharp, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Gauci-Marici, Councillor Lawrence.
All those against?
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, councillors. 10.3 on tonight's report is agenda Strathmore Children's Centre Stage 2 project. Councillors, do I have a motion? Oh, sorry, we forgot all about you, Councillor Nation. 10.3 on tonight's agenda is Strathmore Children's Centre Stage 2 project. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Lawrence first. Councillor Lawrence, seconded. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be quick. Firstly, I'd like to just say that, make a point that councillors can only make decisions on the information before them, and unfortunately the previous building report clearly stated that the Strathmore Heights Kinder was beyond its useful life. Tonight we have a completely different report, and I would like to sincerely thank Mr Lambert and his staff for looking into this issue in great detail and producing the report that we have in front of us that recommends allocating money to this year's and next year's budget for works to bring the Strathmore Heights Kindergarten up to scratch, if you'd like to say that. And most importantly, to revoke the previous decision to relocate Strathmore Heights Kindergarten to the completed Strathmore Children's Centre. So a sincere thanks to all the staff, and I'm certainly happy to support the continued operation of Strathmore Heights Kinder.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I concur with my fellow ward councillor, Councillor Sharp, and agree that the previous report obviously was not correct, and that these centres, these kindergartens, hadn't reached their end of life, and certainly they are in some need of repair and maintenance, but with that maintenance and care, they can be extended, and with the remedial works. And this is a good outcome for the concerned residents of both Strathmore and Strathmore Heights, so that they can continue to use these facilities that have been used for, I think in some cases, over 50 years, and continue to provide great kindergarten experiences for our very young Strathmore residents. Agree with council officers to not proceed with the relocation of the Strathmore Heights Kindergarten and proceed with the required maintenance and remedial work to that building, and the buildings, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gauci-Marici.
I am really pleased to be able to support this motion. I just wanted to give a huge thank you to the community who rallied and campaigned for this, but also a really big credit to the Director of the Department, Mr Lambert, as mentioned before, and Ms Stewart, who committed to investigating what was possible and confirm whether the assessments were reliable or accurate. We could talk about this for ages, but given the previous one, I will be short and sweet. 2 further audits were undertaken. One came back and said it was okay, so a second one was done to reconfirm that again. And they came back saying, yes, the buildings absolutely need some work, but with a bit of investment, they can be used for many years to come. So with that in mind, let's invest in our kids and in our facilities at Strathmore Heights and keep the kinder there. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to review the Stage 2 project as well, so that we can look at the footprint and ensure that we don't build more than we need to at the new facility with Strathmore Heights staying open.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be very brief, being mindful of the enormous amount of time that I have taken up in this meeting, and that my voice, I'm sure people are sick of hearing. I'm pleased to see the report come out this way. I do have concern about the fact that the previous decision was based on information which has turned out to be incorrect, and that is difficult. But I also agree with Councillor Sharp's comments about, I'm pleased that the directors have, and Mr Lambert has taken the opportunity to review and address and actually make sure that we are making any decision based on correct information. For me, I've said to numerous people, I want more kinders in Moonee Valley, not less. And the sense of community that comes with the kinder is something that we've had people speak about, people sitting in the audience. And I know for me that some of the dearest friends I have now are people who I met and when we commenced our kinder journey in Moonee Valley. And it is so important, and it's important not just for the kids but also for the families, and that those children often go through, you've got friendships for life, you've got children having friendships for life. But I think if we are going to have MV 2040 mean anything, and this concept of neighbourhood planning meaning anything, then the idea that we would shut down a kinder in a neighbourhood is totally contrary to that. So I'm more than happy to support this motion and certainly acknowledge the work that the community members have done in fighting for their kinder, because their kinder is loved.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Sharp, would you like to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Council report on tonight's agenda is on 10.4. The next item on agenda is kindergartens in Moonee Ponds. Councillors, do I have Councillor Marshall, of course.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor, while we're on the topic of kinders, I would like to move that Council, 1, commence exploration of suitable sites within the Moonee Ponds neighbourhood to accommodate an early years hub, to include a kindergarten and possibly maternal and child health and occasional care services, to ensure the growing needs of Moonee Ponds families can be met locally. 2, write to relevant federal and state government ministers and members of parliament requesting future funding to support such a hub within Moonee Ponds. And 3, provide regular updates to council in relation to this matter.
See if I can get a seconder for you. Councillor Cusack. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the item or just go straight to the vote?
Oh, I would like to speak to it. I know you want me to go, but please, Mayor, if you'll indulge me, only because this is something that now has been really a process that's gone on for about 3 years now. And I put up a notice of motion which was supported unanimously and really strongly at the time. Essentially, it was a watching brief on the idea of a kinder in Moonee Ponds. And as we are all aware, acutely, there is no council-run kinder in Moonee Ponds. And that creates a number of issues, not just the fact that it deprives the residents and the families of Moonee Ponds of the opportunity to have the experience that the Strathmore Heights people have and will continue to have, but also it has flow-on effects to the other kinders in our municipality. And certainly it creates significant issues for the kinders in Ascot Vale, and particularly Progress and Coronation Kinder. And I know Progress is a community-run kinder, but it's allocated through our central enrolment system. And every year, and I know other councillors will have the same experience, had the same thing this year, we have people calling up absolutely beside themselves that they have missed out in a spot in a kinder that is so close to them. And the reality is it's because we have that limited space, we've got high and increasing populations in Ascot Vale and Moonee Ponds. And some of our families in Ascot Vale and Moonee Ponds are being offered spots in Avondale Heights or Strathmore, which is just not practical for people who are based in the southern part of the municipality to travel if they've got work and family and other commitments. I'm mindful, very much so, that Moonee Ponds and Ascot Vale are the areas of Moonee Valley slated for the highest amount of growth. And so we need to make sure that we commence the process to plan for a kinder. We've seen announcements about universal funding for 3-year-old kinder, which again will create additional demands, and we don't want to be caught on the hop without the facilities to make sure that we can provide a great early years education. And we need to have a plan ready to get in there, and if there is funding available, to make sure we fight for a slice of that funding. It's one of those things around the early years that it can be such a great leveller, and we have to do all we can to support the right of children to have a good early years education, and particularly for kids from disadvantaged or vulnerable backgrounds, that ability to have a wonderful early years education is so important. And we as a council, in my view, do it better than anyone. So I'm hoping that councillors will see fit to support this. Again, we've got MV 2040. How can we say that we are truly bringing to life a neighbourhood concept when one of our biggest suburbs and growing suburbs, as we know, has no kinder provided by council?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cusack.
I suppose very much, I'd like to echo, obviously, very much the words of Councillor Marshall. A couple of things that I think are relevant around this is that, and while ticking off all of those things about location, need, numbers, growth and so on like that in the Moonee Ponds, Ascot Vale area, we need to also take advantage, as Councillor Marshall has pointed to the political will to do something around this space, and again it's about being prepared and in a position to be able to do that. But there are things like the 20-minute city. We talk about the ease and convenience of being able to travel to a place where you work and do things, and be able to locate your activity within a space that is sensible for family life, sensible about sort of getting the balance between family and work, and so on like that. If we put another X thousand new residents into this area, thinking about the racecourse and over the way in the old market area, we've got a total imbalance that is happening, and not to plan to do something in these spaces now is just crazy. There's lots of different models that can be used now in development of a new type of arrangement. We see schools are now being talked about as vertical schools and the likes of that. So the co-location of a variety of services is one aspect, but the actual kindergarten doesn't have to have the look of an old style kindergarten, as much as they might be really nice and all that sort of thing. But there is an opportunity to actually build into this a serious way of thinking that addresses the different lifestyle that people might have from living in lots of apartments and all that sort of stuff, and to consider how we are going forward in the 21st century. And that then ties very closely to our early education planning. And it is about things like access. It is about things like people of diverse cultures and so on like that being able to work closely together. And I think that right now, in a busy place that's called Moonee Ponds, in a place that is changing quite dramatically, and will do in a very short period of time, it is now incumbent on us to really think about what is that other bit of infrastructure that is critical. We're sweating about all sorts of other things, but at least we can start somewhere, and the line, and as good as starting with a kindy, is as good a place as any to start, I reckon.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm more than happy to support this alternate motion put forward by Councillor Marshall, and concur with Councillor Cusack and Councillor Marshall. Very much so about the need to forward plan for Moonee Ponds, and I note the report states I think there's only 151 children of kinder age in Moonee Ponds at present, but as both councillors touched on, Moonee Ponds and Ascot Vale are the areas of the highest anticipated growth over the next 20 years. And Council uses ID Forecasts. ID is the company that analyses and studies population movements and increases and decreases. And the most recent figures to hand for Moonee Ponds are quite significant. So at the moment, if I'll just bring it up, at the moment 2018, Moonee Ponds, 15,838 residents. The 2040 forecast is 27,600. So that's a population change of 74%. An increase in 74% is anticipated. Ascot Vale even more so, 2018, the figure is 16,100. And the ID forecast is a population of 29,500, and that's an 83% increase. Now, contrasted with other areas throughout Moonee Valley, for example, East Keilor is only an 18% increase. And I raise this because we can't just assess things as they are, because if you do that, then you're not going to be able to cater for the demand. Exploring options now is crucial, because we need to be able to accommodate families, and population growth is stemmed by quite a lot of the time by families moving to the area and young families, and therefore having children. We need to plan now. Moonee Valley 2040, our guiding document, is all about planning for the future. If we stuck by the recommendation in our meeting notes, that wouldn't be planning for the future. So I commend Councillor Marshall for this alternate motion, for pursuing and exploring sites for a kinder in Moonee Ponds, because I reckon in about 10 years' time, whoever's sitting around this chamber will be looking for a second or a third kindergarten in Moonee Ponds, because the demand is going to be so great
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Marshall, would you like to close? Straight to the vote?
Yeah.
I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.5 on tonight's agenda is General Revaluation 2019. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Nation.
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
And I saw Councillor Marshall's hand go up for a seconder. So, Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the item?
Only to say that we're now required to do annual valuations of all rateable and non-rateable properties. So I think we have to move this because it's a requirement now under the Valuation of Land Act.
Councillor Marshall. Any other councillor like to speak to the item? I'll put that to the vote as there's no dissent. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.6 on tonight's agenda is the Annual Report 2017-18. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp? Councillor Sharp? And, Councillor Lawrence will second it. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I've just got some quick speaking notes for the annual report, particularly for my pack, and I understand you wish for me to just read out your pack as well, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
So, lifelong learning is my pack, and we prepared options for the development of Nidri Community Hub, including the relocation of the Nidri Library, which is a very, very, very big plan. Council awarded a total of $470,500 as part of its community funding program. Our libraries ran a total of 1,979 sessions, which attracted nearly 62,000 attendances. We upgraded the Wi-Fi at our 4 libraries, purchased 10 new iPads to support digital literacy programs, and had a 23% increase in ebook use and 34% in audiobook use. 2 events were delivered as part of Children's Week, and we trained 23 staff across the organisation in youth mental health first aid. So a very busy time in lifelong learning for your pack, Mr Mayor, sports and community organisations. You invested $30,000 million in capital works, including East Killer Leisure Centre and sporting infrastructure, particularly female-friendly facilities to support women and girls in sport. Opened Fairbairn Park Middle Pavilion in March, it's fantastic down there. Replaced the Fenton Street hockey synthetic surface on the northern pitch. And construction of new pavilions at Ormond Park, Burring Reserve began and are well underway, and the new Cross Keys Pavilion completed will be officially open on Friday, which is another magnificent achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, the annual report's really a historical document, just detailing what Council's done over the previous 12 months. And it is a comprehensive document that gives full details, and if you're interested in all the financials, which is probably better than taking a sleeping pill because it'll certainly send you to sleep, but there's plenty to read there in other areas. I particularly focus on the business promotion, and just to recap a few of those special events. The upgrade of Pridham Plaza in November of last year was a nice little opening. Winterfest, of course, everybody got a huge kick out of the ice skating ring in Moonee Ponds as we attracted 11,000 visitors to our municipality, both from within and those coming from other areas. And it was a great buzz for the area in the dead of winter, and was certainly a fillip for our traders in Moonee Ponds, as we all know. The Acorn co-working space at Sam Merrifield Library was another great initiative by our EcoDev department, and they're doing a great job. Eston North delivered the Leake Street Festival as well, which had terrible weather, but they still flocked there in great numbers, and it was a great initiative by that trading association up in Eston North. Also events, the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival, we had a part to play in that, as well as the Melbourne International Jazz Festival. We established the Business Transformation Program, which delivered improvements to council services and saw a great saving in those areas within the requisition side of council, and I applaud that area of our council, because I think it's continuing to save even as I speak. The pilot stepping stone program for small businesses was also one that assisted culturally and linguistically diverse women to establish micro businesses. Overall, the business promotion was sound and a quality program. To be critical, from where I sit, I'd like to see far more funding thrown at it in future years, because I think it gets barely I was going to use a term, but I better not use that one, a small amount that of council budget, and it probably needs a lot more spent on it to really give it the emphasis that business deserves in our municipality. And I'm sure my EcoDev council officers would totally agree with that. So overall, the council plan was a good result. Thank you.
That could be coming, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Gauci-Marici.
Mr. Mayor, similarly, I would just like to touch on some of the highlights of my Future Communities portfolio. The one that you will keep hearing me bang on about, but I am really excited. We developed and adopted MV 2040, which gives us a long-term strategy for Moonee Valley with our focus on the 13 neighbourhoods and priorities for each. And it really excites me that that will now be seen on the ground in our neighbourhoods as you start to be able to participate in neighbourhood planning and community events, and it will actually be real and tangible going forward now for residents. We developed our first ever advocacy strategy 2018 to 21, which sets our key priorities for the next 3 years. And as part of that, but with a big credit to our mayor, we've secured funding for East Keilor Leisure Centre, the netball and tennis courts at Riverside Golf and Tennis Centre, and some money towards improving the Raleigh Road Bridge. And obviously thank you to our members of parliament and departments who gave us that money as well. Council also received a grant from the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning to deliver a 20-minute neighbourhood pilot project in Strathmore. That was really exciting. We had residents attend a community ideas workshop and then a street party to celebrate those events. And the portfolio advisory committees. And if you will indulge me, I'm sure Councillor Sarace would like for hers to be mentioned in her absence. So, as you're going to do it, perfect. Absolutely, as long as someone does it, that's fine. But yes, it's been a really great year for future communities and MV 2040. So thank you.
Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Marshall.
So I'll only briefly mention a couple of mine, and as I've said before, never have I been so excited to see a project not in my ward opened as I was to see the Green Spine, which is, yes, I think we were all so pleased that that has been opened, and harvest trees and reuses water to create sustainable water resources and green open spaces. The developer contribution plan, which I've spoken about previously. We completed street planting and neighbourhood greening programs with 2,158 street trees planted across the city, which I think is pretty amazing. We've got a long way to go with that one, but it's a great start. And also improved the amenity of streetscapes through design work for Moonee Ponds Activity Centre and Union Road. The Moonee Ponds Creek Master Plan, we've done a significant number of upgrades to council buildings for renewable energy, water and energy efficiency to help save money, which is fabulous. And also 572 solar panels have been installed across our kinders, childcare centres, which again is pretty amazing. In relation to the integrated transport, which is Councillor Sarace's portfolio, and I'm the deputy for that one, we've got the Better Moves Around Schools program and the transport safety strategy. Obviously the work with the LXRA, the delivery of the Walk to School program last October, and we had 17 schools participate in that one, and 4,500 children actually take part, which is pretty incredible. And we've also spent more than $4 million on improving local roads.
And we've got $1.2 million for Racecourse Road as well too.
Oh, that's true. Oh, yes, you're right.
Any other councillor? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We've been going for a fair while tonight, so I'll try to keep this brief. I have the Leisure and Active Communities portfolio, and let's not beat around the bush. The biggest thing there, well, in terms of capital works, is the Leisure Centre, which is great. It's full steam ahead and looking really exciting for closure end of January, start of Feb, for complete demolition and build. So all of the planning and The committees that have been set up have been great, a lot of work, and a shout out to all the staff who have been going to endless meetings on that. Also worked really hard, really hard on the walking and cycling strategies across the city. The Dean Street underpass obviously cost a little bit more than we originally thought, but extremely important for what we're trying to achieve. We've started booking out our community spaces with more to come in November. We're upgrading playgrounds, which I'm extremely passionate about. Tend to be spending a fair bit of time at them lately. Had plenty of community consultations for these. And obviously, as Councillor Lawrence mentioned, different events across the city, and just a shout out to on Friday we've got an event at the opening of the Cross Keys Pavilion between 4:30 and 6:30 from memory, which is great. Anyone who lives around Cross Keys Pavilion, bring your kids along. There's going to be food, it's going to be a bit of fun, opening a great space. So come along, enjoy, and there's plenty more events between now and Christmas as well, so check online. Moonee Valley Kids is a good one. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor to say a few words? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor, in endorsing this motion for the annual report, and in line with my fellow councillors, I will touch on a few of the highlights of my portfolio, which is the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity and Access portfolio. We determined a future direction for the NDIS, and we will continue to support vulnerable people who are not eligible for the NDIS. We endorsed the Workplace Gender Equity Position Statement. Valley Youth consulted with 63 LGBTIQA+ young people through a series of workshops conducted in the community and in high schools across the city. Diversity, access and equity principles were embedded in MV 2040 with the aim of supporting an inclusive city with a particular focus on the theme of fair. We delivered 4 actions from the Disability Action Plan. One of those was taking on paid trainees with a disability at Crown Street Stable Social Enterprise and supporting them to gain employment in the mainstream hospitality sector. And also we implemented the reconciliation policy and actions to build a better connection to land and to celebrate Aboriginal culture.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor? Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I talk about the community and wellbeing area, I think it would be remiss not to mention the leadership of senior officers playing in this space, and the great work that many of our staff are doing in contributing very, very hard to making a lot of this plan come together and stay on its tracks. Some of the highlights in the community and wellbeing area have been around adopting a new activities and general amenities local law, which is a long way of saying it's an opportunity for our streets and neighbourhoods to come alive and for community to do it for itself rather than just have to sit back and wait for something else to happen. I think there are some other things that are real highlights for us, and just very recently we've had the annual thank you event for volunteers in this municipality, people who are looking after people who are vulnerable and have particular needs, and it's fabulous that that's happened. We've also continued to promote mental health and wellbeing through a number of things in education settings in secondary schools to work with young adolescents about how they can identify things that are happening with their friends and be able to get the language to talk about it, and maybe just say to them, hey, you're not so good, you need a bit of a hand. That sort of thing, and feel confident about it. But we've also looked at that whole mental health first aid sort of stuff for training for teachers. On a delivery basis, just as an example, we're also doling out lots and lots of vaccinations to lots and lots of little children, and 70 open sessions happened, and over 11,468 vaccinations as part of the secondary school program, while there was 3,623 in those other open sessions, as I said. There's a decision that was made by council that was quite profound, and I just want to draw everybody's attention to it. And that was to continue to provide aged care services while we're still in receipt of Commonwealth money until June 2020. We could have easily given that up and moved it offshore and stepped away from it. But in fact, this council has made a very strong commitment to those older people who are in our community, and statistically it's a growing number, and we need to really make sure that that's got done well. And I suppose finally, the couple of other things that I'd really like to bring to the people's attention is that there's a lot of work going on around the development of the Flemington Hub. It is developing a whole new model for community consultation about the design of something that is so central and important to a local community. It's going to be a very big investment from the City of Moonee Valley into the lives of the Flemington community, but it's also one that is being very much directed by the Flemington community, and in fact, in the very near future, we're all getting to play with our crayons and design something, which is fabulous. The final point, Mayor, is the Flemken Festival of Arts and Ideas grew out of a community idea, and it was not so much about sort of putting stuff on a wall. This is about 50 events happening over 3 weeks that are all provided and supported and delivered by local community people. So whether it's Art Deco walks, whether it's painting, whether it's about doing events of various sorts like the theatre and so on like that. But the most important part about it is with the racing season coming on, there's a lovely milliner in our area, and if you want to nick down to Racecourse Road and buy your hat, you certainly can.
Councillor Sharp, would you like to go straight to the vote? Yep. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.7 on tonight's agenda is Capital Works Program update. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Lawrence, would you like to move the officer's recommendation?
I'll move the officer's recommendation, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the item?
Just ever so briefly, Mr Mayor, without getting into too many figures, but I've got a few here already. Look, this is a variation and a carryover from previous financial year of items not completed, which sees the Capital Works budget adjusted to 60.9 million, which includes those carryovers. The Capital Works program of note includes, and I just have picked out a few that I thought were noteworthy, 8 drinking water fountains, which came from a grant, the upgrade of the Airport West Kinder for 145,000, cricket nets at the AJ Davis Reserve, 45,000, the netball court resurfacing at Aberfeldy Primary, 400,000, Riverside netball, 1.5 mil, Cross Keys Reserve Pavilion, which was already mentioned by Councillor Byrne, and the opening of that, and that was a variation at 1.95, I think it was. And also, of course, the baseball pavilion at Boeing Reserve, which was a fantastic, not open yet, but we had a bit of a pre-look at it recently, and it's a fantastic pavilion and will really put, if I can just digress for 1 second, and if you'll excuse me, Mr Mayor, to say that it puts Moonee Valley at the top echelon of baseball centres in Australia, not just Victoria. So
the envy.
And we are not only the envy, and as the Mayor has pointed out to me, we have other states coming to have a look at it to see how it's done. So full marks there. All worthwhile Capital Works projects and a great investment in the future of Moonee Valley City Council. Thank you.
Yes, I must reiterate what you said there, Councillor. We had the West Australian Minister for Sport coming to have a look at our facilities. Even he's heard about them, so that's terrific. Councillor Sharp. Any other councillor say a few words? As there's no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Next report is 10.8 on tonight's agenda. Is the East Keilor Leisure Centre Expressions of Interest Evaluation.
Chair, reminder over conflict of interest. Need to leave the chambers.
You have to. I'm sure it won't be as long as we did last time.
Are you tempting me?
Go ahead, Councillor Byrne.
And thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Fantastic. Do I have a seconder for the East Keele Leisure Centre expressions of interest? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the
Well, I
item?
don't think this one's going to be controversial. I wouldn't have thought so. I think the most important thing is, and I probably should tally up how many times we actually talk about the East Keele Leisure Centre, but I think it needs to show some sort of reassurance to the community that we're not just spending $50 million and not doing our due diligence. So this is where we're at this stage. We've effectively put out for tender, received 8 responses down to 4, and then we just need to keep going through the process between November and December to award a final contractor. So all of the people that were interviewed, there's quite a process. It was all set out in here. We're not just randomly choosing people, which the community can be happy about. They're all very experienced, the final 4, and all have had exceptional experience in building really big, expensive facilities. We want to have the best, and we will. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sharp. Is there any dissent? Oh, you want to speak to the item, or are you dissenting against it?
I'd like to speak to the item.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As we've had several discussions on East Keeler Leisure Centre over the past, and I've never been overly keen on this project, not because I'm not in favour of leisure centres, but the return on the investment on this, and I'm told that it's not how much we're going to end up getting back, it's other factors, but the ratepayer is concerned, and I've spoken to several of them, in fact a lot of them, about there's never been a clearly stated or understood return on the investment, and that is a concern that I have, and the cost to build have increased over the last period of time from, I think it was around 28 to 30 million, then it went up to closer to 40, and now we've pretty much nudged to 50 million for this project. So it's increased over time, and that is a concern, because I just wonder what the final figure is going to be once the building actually starts, and where we end up. Added to the above, my personal research tells me that indoor swimming centres generally that nearly all operate well have a 50-metre pool indoor, not a 25, and that's just, and I'm not an expert on swimming schools and all that sort of thing, but the feedback that I again like to do my research, and they tell me that in the swim school business, the 25 metres is just a bit too on the small side, so that's a concern for me. My biggest fear in all of this is the final cost to build, as I've mentioned, and I'm not saying it's going to hit 60 million, and I hope to heck it doesn't. But it will leave our ratepayers with a large debt, and I know we've had a little minuscule amount thrown at it from the state government, but that's a large debt going into the future, and I know ratepayers are concerned about that, and I for one am as well, and I express that in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor say a few words? Councillor Sharp, would you like to close? Sorry? Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Byrne, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lawrence, for your remarks. I know that you've been, often speaking on this project, but I suppose we're at a point where we are going ahead. It's with this project at this stage. It's when I first came onto council, yes, the price was $37.5 million, and it didn't take long. I believe it probably would have been about 12 months ago, possibly a bit longer, that it went to 50, and it's been at 50 for quite a while now. Anyone who has seen the plans, it is a top-notch leisure centre. It has many indoor pools. The reason why I believe anyway that it doesn't have an indoor 50-metre pool is because there was a really strong community outcry when there was talk of removing the outdoor 50-metre pool and having an indoor 50-metre pool and an outdoor 50-metre pool. Well, that probably would have got up to $60 million, $70 million, who knows. as someone who's been to that outdoor 50-metre pool, it's got quite a sentimental, and you being from East Keilor as well, Mayor, you're probably the same, that there is that sentimental attachment to the outdoor 50-metre pool. Swimmers, I don't know why they do it, but they seem to like cold water, and look, it's just one of those things. We can't have everything, whilst it would be nice, but for $50 million, if you haven't been online, please go out online and check out the animated video which shows as you walk in, the cafeteria area, all of the pools, those tipping buckets for the kids to go underneath with the indoor water features and water slides, the outdoor 50-metre pool. It's an amazing project. It's going to be wonderful for so many families. And just to touch on your return on investment, it is really hard to say. Are we going to make money, cash, off the leisure centre? Well, no. Let's be honest, but that's not why we're doing it. It is well endorsed in our council plan and our health and wellbeing plan that we need to be providing these facilities for our residents and for the wider community, and we need to be encouraging health and wellbeing, and that's exactly what we're doing with this leisure centre. It was at a knockdown stage. We have to do it. It's come through the chamber many times, and it's going to be wonderful, and the community is, we're maybe not going to get dollars back, but people are going to live longer because of it. I'll put it that way.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Oh, sorry. All those in favour?
Councillor Sharp, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Gauci-Marici.
All those against?
Councillor Lawrence.
The next item is the response to a notice of motion, joint council planning between the City of Melbourne and the City... Oh, yes. I keep forgetting about him. Cam? The next item is a joint council planning between the City of Melbourne and the City of Moonee Valley. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation. Just as a point of clarification, on page 99 of the report, the diagram there shows the two joint council executive officer meetings, and the commentary above just refers to an annual meeting. So I assume that, I don't know whether we need, or that can just be reflected. You understand what I'm saying?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, we discussed that and we felt that the diagram captured the frequency of meetings as requested.
The text doesn't matter.
No, but for the purpose of the minutes, we can expand the minutes to reflect the frequency of the meetings as depicted in the diagram.
That'd be great.
Okay.
So the motion, sorry, can we just go down to point 5, if that's all right? So in point 4, oh yeah, as outlined in figure 1. That's all right. And figure 1, I think, is, yep, that's great. So it's covered. Sorry, just need to clarify that. So
Thank you. I'll see if I can get a seconder for you. Councillor Cusack. Councillor Marshall, would you like to be brief?
Do I have to debate that? So this notice of motion was one that came to council, I think it was earlier this year. So I appreciate that we've got moving. It's really about formalising the relationship and the interaction that happens between the City of Moonee Valley and our neighbour in the City of Melbourne. It's really interesting. The report provides a great summary of various projects that either we're doing, they're doing, and ones that where we have joint interests. But it also, in the figure, sets out a meeting cycle which, if established, will mean that there are regular meetings between officers, and then also between councillors and officers, and then the jointly hosted annual Flemington-Kensington Community Forum. So we'll trial this and we see how we go. Certainly, I know officers do meet and have lots of discussions with the City of Melbourne officers, which is great, but I think it's really important to have that councillor buy-in too and the community buy-in in a bit more of a formal way. And on that note, I'd certainly like to thank Councillor Rohan Leppert. Rohan has been a great friend for Moonee Valley in many ways, and really genuinely interested in those cross-border issues, for want of a better description. So I'm sure that he will be very much interested in participating in these meetings, as I'm sure other City of Melbourne councillors will be, and certainly obviously the Moonee Valley Ward councillors and community members.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor. There's, as Councillor Marshall mentioned, there are many major developments and the like that are connecting both of our communities, and some of them are worthwhile just mentioning here. The impact of the Arden-Macaulay development down in Kensington is going to be monstrous. It has got lots. Well, it's a whole new city being built within a city, and the implications are that Moonee Valley, through Racecourse Road and into Flemington, our resources will be called upon in that space. So too, the standard things that are already happening, like their redevelopment of the North Melbourne area and so on like that, in particular around the flats in Sutton Street and Bunkle and so on like that, are really important considerations for us, as well as along Racecourse Road, where there are many, many tall buildings being proposed by the City of Melbourne, ranging from the currently the Quiet Man Hotel up to Boundary Road, some of them 9 and 12 stories in height, right opposite our Flemington estate. So there is a critical issue about how we work with the City of Melbourne to reduce the impact somewhat on our local community and the drawing on our resources. So all of those things put together makes it really sensible that we have a strong and ongoing relationship. That cycle of meetings is really important, and you can see that very obviously. But one of the highlight ones is the notion of the forum, where councillors from both City of Melbourne and here will be able to present and work with, along with senior staff, to the community directly, and have those conversations at the Kensington Town Hall about what it really looks like and how things are going. So we're not an interface council like all those ones who talk about out in the outer burbs, but we have very, very particular and important needs, and part of getting that right is very much about what we're doing with our very big southern neighbour, who often seems to get it wrong, but they don't like to be told. So we have to have that conversation with them. So, Councillor Marshall, your notice of motion is a fabulous idea. I know that a few people have been stirring the pot to try and get something going on this for a long time, and well done. Maybe the final outcome in this is that we might be able to rescue the Flemington, if not the racecourse, the showgrounds out of all of this and bring it back into Moonee Valley.
Thank you, Councillor.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Did I cut you off? Did I? Oh, sorry.
You did.
Oh, sorry. I do apologise. I thought you finished. Any other councillor like to say a few words? Councillor Marshall, would you like to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Next item is nature strip landscaping policy. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Lawrence.
Move the officer's recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Marshall. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, just briefly again, good feedback from the community and residents for this nature strip landscaping policy. The revisions are good, and they include the use of images to approve design and list of suggested plants, reference to the protected and significant trees, reduce the application fee to $45 from $50, confirm address of the intended landscaping. I think that's a few of these were obvious, but I guess they weren't actually said originally, and restrictions on use of chemicals to improve and improve images, as well as the stakes, fences, barriers, retaining walls. Expand the list of the Indigenous plants that are from Moonee Valley as well, which is good. And I do note that Council still has the final say on any application for use of landscaping on nature strips, which is good. And that's obviously for occupational health and safety reasons and lifting of footpaths, etc. So I think it's a good move, and it will just tidy up this policy, and it's good to have a bit of feedback from the community. I think that most of the suggestions were taken on board by council officers, and that to me spells good communication between our community and our council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Marshall, would you like to say a few words?
I would concur with what Councillor Lawrence has said. I think it's really important we received the feedback, and in this instance we've been able to accommodate most of it. I love the idea too. I saw the comment that we'd had all these images about what you couldn't do, but not images about what you could do. So I think that's great that that has been included. I still have some reservations about the fee, but I think it's one of those situations where we can monitor, and obviously when we come to budget time we've got the ability to amend the fee if it looks like it is acting as a barrier for people to go through this process. But I've already got my my little planter box ready to go, so I'll have to be lodging my my application as soon as I can, along with my $45.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to say a few words? As there's no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.11 on tonight's agenda is a special charge scheme for a right-of-way in Tennyson Street, Essendon. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gauci-Marucci.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got an alternate motion which reads that Council abandons the special charge scheme for the construction of Tennyson Street, Essendon right-of-way and notifies all parties to the matter of the abandonment.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Gauci-Marucci, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you. I will, somewhat briefly, I could go through all the history around how the petition was raised and who does or doesn't access it and who has or hasn't developed their land, but really this entire discussion hinges on the term majority support. When it came to us several months ago, there was 5 yes, 5 no and 4 no responses. So it was an even split with 4 no responses, and we weren't comfortable that that meant majority support. So the special committee was established. The special committee was established so that we could understand those submissions and get an understanding of whether there was majority support. 5 of the 14 properties wrote objections, and one of those objectors spoke at the meeting on the 12th of the 9th. There were 9 properties who didn't respond at all to the proposal. So for me, all I've heard from the special committee, from the previous processes, is the objections, and that we can't presume that someone not responding means that there's majority support. So for me, I just can't support proceeding with a scheme that doesn't literally have majority support.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I concur with my fellow ward councillor, Councillor Gauci-Marucci, and certainly the definition around what is actually a majority of residents is the sticking point. That it's not clear that with 9 of 14 residents not responding, that that's an acceptance of a charge scheme, and that to me just doesn't it gets used in this council quite a bit, the pub test, and to me that just it certainly doesn't pass the test that the pubs I've been in anyway. Anyway, the point being that it's not logical, so I agree totally that with this alternative motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor say a few words? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this issue has certainly been going on quite a long time. I've met with the residents directly, with officers on a number of occasions, going back to the previous term. So I concur with my fellow councillors, and I think we've progressed this issue from our when it was last tabled around this at this meeting, because we didn't have a clear majority support last time, so we progressed it to the special committee meeting. Now, I was hoping at that committee meeting that we would at least have a very, very firm view or a firm understanding of what the residents actually want us to do down there, because they've certainly spoken about it a lot, but when it has come to the final, I guess, crunch time, we have only 5 people out of the 14 responding, and all those are no's. There's not even one submission in support. So considering some of these properties are going to have a bill of potentially up to $9,000 for the construction of a right-of-way, and I don't know, they haven't told us clearly, well, the 9 that didn't respond didn't tell us clearly yes or no. I can't for me it feels like I would be effectively forcing this imposition on people, on residents, when we don't have that clear support. So I'm very, very conscious of that. I'm very conscious of the past dealings as well, and it has been a really, really big issue. So all I can say is it's gotten to this point, and I'm so surprised that we're in this position, because I was expecting to at least hear from the residents that wanted it, but we haven't. So I'm happy to support Councillor Gauci-Marici's alternative.
Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? As there is, Councillor Nation.
I just wanted to note that I think this is a very good example of the importance of respecting our previous resolutions around the chamber, and that concept that we did resolve on the 10th of July to only proceed with this if there was majority support. And as the ward councillors have detailed, not one person in the affirmative, and therefore we do need to respect that decision that we made, and not proceed with this scheme. And it's important that when we do sit around here and make decisions, that we do adhere to them, because that obviously gives the community clear guidance, and in this case won't leave 14 owners with a bill of upwards of $10,000.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor? As there's no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.12, appointment of independent member to the Audit Committee. Councillors, Councillor Gauci-Marici.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
I'll see if I can get a seconder for you. Councillor Cusack. Councillor Gauci-Marici would like to speak to the item.
Just to let, I'm sure, the public who might just see a name on a piece of paper and would like to know who John Watson is. So John brings with him 26 years of extensive experience in the local government sector. He's currently the Audit and Risk Committee Chairperson at Nillumbik Shire, Maroondah City Council, Central Goldfields Shire, Moreland City Council, the Municipal Association of Victoria, and serves as an independent Audit Committee member at Wyndham City Council and the City of Greater Geelong. In addition to all of the above, John is also a Board Director at Northern Health and the Chairperson of the Victorian Grants Commission. So we are very fortunate to be able to have him on board. And also noting with that, that we would like to thank the previous chairperson, Bruce, for his incredible service over the last 6 years. Having joined the Audit Committee last year, he was a brilliant chairperson and ran a fantastic committee. So we will be sorry to see him not in that role, as excited as we are with John coming on board. Thank you. Councillor Cusack.
Just to endorse exactly what Councillor Gauci-Marici has just said, but to also note that John Watson was one of the commissioners for Brimbank for quite some years, until Brimbank rejoined the notion of being a democratically elected council. And John's leadership at Brimbank was second to none. He delivered a lot of important reforms and also new capital works there. The reason I mention that is because he has got an intimate knowledge of the operation of councils, and that's another wonderful thing that he brings to us from a very practical perspective.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to say a few words? As there's no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. The report on the Audit Committee. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gauci-Marici? Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cusack? Councillor Gauci-Marici, would you like to speak to the item?
Fairly self-explanatory, there was only one meeting, but our committee is an incredible group of microphone. Yes, we are very lucky to have our audit committee. The report's self-explanatory on this one. So.
Thank you. Councillor Cusack.
No, I have nothing to add, Mayor.
Any other councillors? As there's no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Notice of motion, quarterly reports. Councillors, do I have a motion? Is that you, Councillor Nation? Putting your hand up?
I was itching my eye. I will happily move the officer's
Thank
recommendation.
you, Councillor Nation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the item?
Just to say, this is a update on the status of current and outstanding and completed notice of motions that have been endorsed since the 10th of July 2018. You can see them in Appendix A. Some other councillors may wish to flag some that are in that appendix, but I'm happy to leave it as that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lawrence.
No, I think that's it's all pretty self-explanatory in the councillor report. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? As there's no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.15, Assembly of Councillors. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gauci-Murici and Councillor Burns second. Would you like to speak to the item?
Only just to make the point, I often get asked what actually gets discussed at public forums, and until such point as we live stream them, this is the place where you find that out. You can go through and each of the dot points specifies what was discussed at public forums. So otherwise, the officer's report is self-explanatory. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Byrne.
Just briefly, I think it's quite interesting to have a look through for any of the residents to see what gets discussed at our strategic briefings, because there are things we discuss, obviously, at the briefings that don't come into the chamber, such as Inland Rail and Flemken Festival and whatnot. So it's just interesting to see what we cover. So have a look, guys.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor to say a few words? As there's no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Notice of motion. Councillors, the next item of business is notice of motion, and we have one notice of motion from Councillor Gauci-Murici. Would you like to leave, Councillor? Councillor, would you like to leave? Okay. Do I have Councillor Gauci-Murici?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Council, in relation to the Buckley Street level crossing removal project, prior to Friday 26th October 2018, writes to the Honourable Jacinta Allen MP, Minister for Public Transport, the Honourable Ben Carroll MP, Minister for Industry and Employment, Danny Pearson MP, State Member for Essendon, and Kevin Devlin, Chief Executive Officer, Level Crossing Removal Authority. 1, outlining the matters previously raised by Council which are still outstanding. 2, identifying the areas of concern following the opening of the road under rail level crossing removal and requesting consideration of mitigation measures. And 3, requesting a post-opening traffic impact report, including a commitment to fund required mitigation measures.
Thank you, Councillor. If we can get a seconder for you. Councillor Lawrence. Would you like to speak to the item?
I will, thank you. I may need a slight increase in time. I will try and stay under it though. I am very pleased to be able to move this motion. It is no secret that I was of the view that road under was an inferior solution for the Buckley Street crossing removal, or that I had thought discovery was the only way we might fully understand the impact of this project on our community. But we are where we are, and the road under solution has been opened. And what we can do now is to continue to advocate for our community. So with that in mind, point 1, which is about the matters previously raised by Council which are still outstanding. There are a number of matters we've raised which are still outstanding, including delivering DDA access, including a lift, providing traffic lights at the intersection of Mount Road, Shamrock and Grice, replacement of parking spaces which have been removed, ensuring the safety of cyclists and pedestrians, landscaping and public realm works. Point 2 identifies the concerns which have arisen during the project. Obviously, many of us as councillors would get a number of emails and phone calls when things happen relating to the removal project, And this just captures the ones that have come through to us, the ones that have come through to council. I will touch on the ones that have come through to me or that I'm aware of. But if there's anything else that the community thinks is an issue that we may not be aware of, please email it through and we will add it to the list. So the list currently includes widths of parking spaces, widths of pedestrian walkways, the signalisation on Mount Alexander Road, which is currently confusing and dangerous for road users, the lighting in the trench, access and usability for buses, the location of the bus stops, the operation of the trench. My understanding is that there are multiple drivers who have undertaken 3-point or U-turns within the tunnel. And as a couple of days ago, there was apparently pedestrians in there as well. The positioning of bollards and poles on walkways, the safety of pedestrians and cyclists, the conditions of road surfaces and pavements where works have occurred, and the movement of traffic at McPhail, Cliff, Robb, etc., streets where they intersect for the turning points. Actually going really well for time, I don't need an extension. And finally, on point 3, this enables us to better understand how the traffic movements in and around the area have changed since the trench opened, compared to what the LXRA proposed or what they told residents. So the final piece that we are seeking is a commitment to fund the required mitigation measures. It is really important for us to ensure that the problems which have been created are resolved, rather than leaving council to pick up the pieces when it's handed back to us. I think this week, particularly given some of the commentary personally, it is really important for me to highlight the incredible work that one of our officers and his team has done around this issue. Gil Richardson has just done so much work around this issue. When I refer to the lists of things that will be sent to the aforementioned people, Gil Richardson has been running these lists since day one, and he has consistently communicated to the LXRA and to the ministers and to government about achieving better outcomes for our community. So he has done so much work on this. And he and his team, having continued to undertake so much work on this project, they have contributed significant time and effort to identifying the concerns and how they work through to resolve those. So I think on behalf of us, we'd really like to thank that team for their work, and particularly Gil. So for me, just in closing, Council have and will continue to advocate for our community given the significant impact this project is having, and this motion is just one way in which we can do this.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I thank Councillor Gauchamarucci for moving this motion, and certainly she's stolen just about every point I could come up with. But there are a few issues that I would like to add, and that is that I agree totally that the date of this is imperative. I mean, the state ministers mentioned, as well as those members, will be going into caretaker mode come the end of this month, and so it's imperative that this letter get out by the end of the week, and that council gets some answers, because the residents of Essendon Moonee Ponds need to get some answers about the level crossing removal and where that has ended up. The traffic impact reports and the safety concerns have never been addressed. We've never seen a report, we've never seen anything. Nobody, the council's never seen anything, stakeholders have never seen anything, traders have never seen anything, councillors have never seen anything. So what really, really does concern me with this whole thing is not just the cover-up or the lack of transparency, but the potential injury to a child, a school child particularly, and it'll be too late when that happens. We have to have something done now. So improvements have also got to be addressed for the safety and accessibility for the disabled, the elderly, parents with prams, cyclists in and out of the tunnel. These are all issues that no one has really come up with a categorical, this is safe now. So finally, and I think Councillor Gauchamarucci hinted on this, and that is, most importantly, before the LXRA, John Holland and the state government wash their hands of the entire Buckley Street level crossing and disappear into the thin air. They need to complete this job properly, and this letter goes a long way to addressing that. So I certainly concur with this, and would hope other councillors do too.
Thank you, Councillor. What do you have a councillor to say for you? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. I rise or stay seated and support Councillor Gauchi-Marici's notice of motion, and think it is critical with such large projects that are completed in this municipality, particularly by a level of government above us, that we ensure that the entire project, or all the entire project is completed, and all the add-ons, which ultimately sold as being sweeteners, are actually rolled out and fulfilled, and therefore being able to keep the LXRA, the state government, on their toes to be able to ensure that we do get those deliverables, regardless of what happens on the last weekend in November. We need those public realm improvements rolled out. We need those promised signalisations that have been promised or proposed. We need a sweeping review of the project area to ensure its disability compliance, to ensure that any signalling issues or signage issues are resolved. I know myself turning left into Mount Alexander Road on a green signal, coming out of the tunnel eastbound, the vehicle in the slip lane also proceeded on the green signal, and nearly had a collision the other day. And so there's little elements and aspects like that need to be addressed and need to be looked at. How pedestrian traffic moves, how those in prams and wheelchairs can continue to access the station and access the area safely. So congratulations or commendations to you, Councillor Gauchi-Marici, for and Mr Richardson for his work putting together a comprehensive list. And let's keep the LXRA state government on their toes to ensure that we do get those deliverables. I would love to see Essendon Station disability compliant, given it is it is the largest station in our municipality. There was a post or a comment, I don't know if it was on Facebook or somewhere, about an individual who is in a wheelchair, and someone said, "Oh, how do you find the change to Essendon Station?" They said, "I've been avoiding it for years because it is just too difficult in a self-operated chair to be able to not only get up to the platform, but to then actually be able to get onto the train." So I don't want these things forgotten. It's important that we ensure that while we have an inferior solution road-wise, that we have superior solutions around it to ensure that...
I'll have to wind you up, Councillor.
Yeah, as Councillor Lawrence has alluded to, we don't want an accident to occur, and as a result of negligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor to say a few words? Councillor Sharp.
Just quickly, just like to thank my ward councillors for putting this notice of motion forward. Personally, I'm really concerned about what we're going to be left with at the end once all the works are completed. So we do really need a commitment that the issues that are raised will be fixed, because anything that is not fixed will have certainly long-term detrimental effects. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gauchi-Marici. Oh, Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Gauchi-Marici, for putting this one up. I think that you've all covered it very well in terms of your dot points. As someone who obviously comes from the Rose Hill ward direction, I found it quite interesting on the day that it opened, in terms of coming down from the Waverley Street, and it was quite easy to get in, and then drove around a bit and went back out and thought, apart from the fact that don't necessarily go with the design of the colours and whatnot, that's a side point, you know, it was quite easy to use. And then I spent probably the next half hour to an hour, I suppose, going in and out of the side streets and seeing how that was all working. And as obviously previously highlighted in this chamber many, many times, there are a lot of issues. And that was, I think it was on a weekend or a public holiday, or it was on an extremely quiet day. So it was interesting to be able to see how it worked. And then obviously trying to do that at school time is very difficult, which is no doubt always going to be the case. So from further down the road, getting straight through, I think the general feedback from the community is it's fine to go through, but the residents and pedestrians and everyone locally are struggling. So I think it's good to have this in writing, and it will be interesting to see if we get a reply between the 26th and caretaker. I'm thinking not, but it doesn't matter, at least it's on the record. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, would you like to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Next item is urgent business. I believe we have no items of urgent business tonight, councillors. Delegates' reports. Is there any delegates' reports from councillors? No? Confidential reports. Mr Mayor, Mr CEO, do we have any confidential reports tonight? No? No. So I will now close the meeting. That concludes our meeting tonight, and thank you to the members of the gallery, the public gallery, and those watching on live streaming for your interest tonight, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.